G'day ladies and gents, welcome to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome to the closed beta test for Ground Forces. Now, I've actually been on the closed beta test for some time. I got my invite code in very early January. However, when I got on, I didn't like what I saw. It wasn't so much the game itself. I could really see the potential and what they were trying to do. However, the time I only think it was available, well, the only game mode that was available was arcade, and I really wasn't getting along with arcade all that well. Now, since that time, realistic battles and simulation battles have been incorporated into tanks, and I should have rushed over to take a look at realistic battle as soon as it was available, but I didn't. It has given me the hindsight, though, of having played the game at a much early state to see how far they have progressed with ground forces. When I first jumped on, the tanks really did feel like go-karts more than they felt like tanks. Now, you can actually feel you're driving a big, weighty machine. They're slow to accelerate. You can feel the low horsepower in the earlier tanks. Everything, well, it feels like I'm actually playing a tank game now. Now, speaking of tanks, because I haven't played in some time, I have almost none of the tech tree unlocked, so I'm starting from scratch. This is the T-26 Mod 39. This is the Russian reserve tank. This is the equivalent of, the I-15s or so on for the Russians. Your very first tank you get access to in-game. Armament's a 45mm Type 20K cannon. It's a 9.2 tank with a 91 horsepower engine. It'll do about 30 kilometers an hour, but don't expect it to get there fast. It's got about 57 degrees of traverse in a stock format. This tank has no upgrades applied to it at the time. And, well, its rear arm is 6mm thick, and at the thickest points over the rest of the tank, turret and hull included, it's only 15mm. So this tank's about as heavily armoured as a Honda Civic. Just taking a look through sniper mode, the last time I played this, I don't even think sniper mode had been put into the game yet. It was only normal view mode. I could be wrong on that, I may just not have known the key bindings, but beginning my progression, I know there's a tank ahead. I'm moving with a teammate. We're trying to move in a group of two. I'm not sure what the tank is at this stage in time, just that there's one up there. Advancing up the road. I really have to say I did have a lot of fun playing around in realistic battles. I'm looking forward to playing tanks now on the live server. I was a little worried it wasn't going to be my thing with only arcading, but realistic battles is really selling me on this game. Now, I've proceeded up the edge of the ridge here. I'm trying to get an angle down. It's a Stug 2, which is a non-reserve but Era 1 tank destroyer for the Germans. And it's really hull down. He's got himself into a brilliant position. He's already taken out one of our tanks that's tried to advance up the road, and the gun depression is not good enough on this tank for me to get an angle on him. So I'm trying to reposition myself here, but I do not want to block my ally, because he's in a great position for getting shots onto this tank. Shoot too high. This was one of the first battles that I've actually played on the CBT for this iteration of it, so I'm still getting used to the ballistics on the cannons. First shell goes in and bounces. I've got a very, very, very thin line of this tank visible to shoot at. Another bounce. I really should have backed it off at this point in time. This guy's far too hull down for me to be able to get hits on. I do love the effect when I fire the cannons, though. You'll notice every time it fires, the massive smoke wave that comes out the front that actually obscures your vision. And I take a hit. And it's a big one. Punches straight through my front armour, lights me on fire, and I detonate. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to be included in the live game, but it would make sense to do so considering the numbers of tanks that were involved in battles, but certain tanks have a number of respawns, even in realistic battle modes that you're available to use. Light tanks such as this reserve tank actually get three respawns available to them. I know some of the larger ones only have 2. I'm unsure about, for your medium tanks, I'm unsure about your heavy tanks and your tank destroyers at this point in time, as I haven't played one. Or at least I haven't played one since, I think the last time I was on the closed beta server before this was when the Tiger 2s were first shown off, so the Tiger 2s and the Ferdinands, and being arcade as that's all I played at the time, I'm not sure if the respawns match up. So this time, I know there's a Stug 3 that's buried in that road up there. There are a bunch of heavy tanks moving to assist my ally. I'm not going to be of much use trying to get rid of a hull down Stug, so I'm going in the jungle. Now this was interesting from a physics standpoint. I knocked over a tree there and had no problems until I hit the top of the tree, the largest point on the palm firm, where the tree gets thicker and heavier and all the foliage is, and it actually jammed my track, so I had to back up and reposition the tank in order to progress forward. Knowing that, I'm now trying to keep to a clearer path with only the smaller trees on the way through. And what I'm going to try and do here is cross through the jungle, and there's a ridge line just over here, and I'm going to try and climb up around the back and get flanking shots on that stug. Going head on with only a 45mm cannon, I'm not going to be of great use. But what do you know? The enemy team have a Panzer II. Now I didn't angle and he was already pre-aimed. I donked the first shot, completely miss, and he puts a shell straight through the front and kills my crew. So there's my second respawn done. I'm down to one tank left. I was not expecting them to have a Panzer II sitting on top of that hill. I got no indication of it being there beforehand, so oops. Let's try that again. Now this bit here was really interesting. If you look just in front of me, the tracks that from the path that I took into the jungle are still quite visible, and while they are slowly disintegrating as I'm moving forward, they did stay for an exceptionally long period of time when you count how far that I drove for. This is interesting when you're looking at how are you going to track down a single tank on some of the larger tank maps that are going to put in later. In games like World of Tanks, tanks can effectively hide and can drag out a match for an exceptionally long period of time. And with the maps in War Thunder being so much larger, it was always a question of how will you find them. Well, it looks like you're just going to be able to follow their tracks. They're going to leave markers where they've been. If you're really trying to work out where a tank has been, you follow the marks they leave on the ground. The biggest trick of it will be trying to work out whether or not those marks were created by one of your tanks, or whether or not those marks were created by the tank you're trying to follow. Now I'm just trying for some range shots on this Panzer II sitting on the ridge at the moment. I'm firing a couple of shots, moving, firing a couple of shots, moving. I don't want to stay in too much of a position. That shot was too low. I can see I've got a window available to me here to fire. Too low again. This tank has plenty of ammunition, 103 rounds of each kind, when it's on an even load at least. So AP and high explosive is what this thing carries. And there's my first hit. No major critical damage, but that one did. That one broke multiple components on the tank. As you can see, it gets a pop-up above the map showing what areas you hit and what areas you damaged. There was nothing super critical to the tank, but enough that I've wrecked its operation a little. Now, this was another thing I noticed, or at least I think I noticed, while I was playing around with tanks last night when I recorded this. Now, the shot that the Panzer II got me before, he ammo racked me and blew my tank in half with one hit. This thing has a lot of ammunition, 103 rounds or 206 total over the two ammo types. Now I did play around on a later map by reducing the amount of ammunition I carried. Now not only did my tank seem to handle a little bit better with the lower ammo load, meaning the actual ammunition you're carrying looks like it has physical weight within the game, but I also noticed I never died from ammo racks once I reduced the numbers of shells down. So the actual threat of being ammo racked may be, it could have been just they never hit my ammo rack. It could also be that the ammo racks themselves, the threat that they being ammo racked is directly proportional to the amount of shells you're carrying within the rack. If you take a hit to an ammo rack and there's nothing there, obviously you're not going to blow up. Which is really nice, considering that it was actually something that I had a problem with in World of Tanks. There were many occasions where on larger maps, generally during clan wars, that I would be running fairly low on ammunition, yet I would take a hit to the ammo rack and my tank would still go up like I had nothing but stacks of TNT mounted into the tank. I always found it amusing. If actually removing some of your ammo reduces that chance, it is a nice change. Now I try to ford the river here. I pick a really bad spot. I come in on an awkward angle and I jam my tank for a second, but I find a way to get it out. I'm trying to slip up nice and close to this ridge so I can get a really good shot on this Panzer II. And his situational awareness is down. He tries to make a charge and doesn't realise I've already crossed the ford, fire a shot, straight into the engine, blow his tank. So there's my first kill. Now I saw a tank firing around the ridge a few moments before from this direction, and I moved to assist but realised I have two allies two of my top players in the team actually are pushing on that particular tank. They're both in T50s, so they're still in Era 1 tanks, but they're not reserves. They're a little bit better than what I'm driving. They don't need my assistance. My 45mm gun's not going to be very good there. So I decide I'm going to go back this way and climb the ridge the same way that Panzer II came down it, and see if I can move around and get some flanking shots in on the target. Pick a slightly too steep a point there. With only 91 horsepower at nearly 10 tons, this tank doesn't climb very well. But it is something that I like, considering, as I said earlier on, the last time I really spent a lot of time in the CBT, it was in arcade mode, and it was before realistic battles were incorporated into the game, and the tanks really did feel like go-karts. This thing would have just about jumped that hill to get up on top of it. It was a little silly. This, much more like it. I've got to work with a tank. I slide a little bit there as I turn, because I'm on a bit of an angled slope, which again feels nice. It feels realistic. A tank would lose traction on that sort of situation. And I come up to crest the ridge. Now as I come up, I light up a tank over there, so I'm a little cautious. Just pause for a second. He does appear to be behind that rock. I don't think he's got visual on me. Carefully checking the jungle to my left-hand side to see if there is anyone over there. I can, just because a target hasn't been red boxed doesn't mean you cannot potentially see a tank on the ground. Targets within your visual range are what gets red boxed. Everything else you can still, it's much like flying in planes. All aircraft are rendered at all times, all tanks are rendered at all times. Just because you haven't got a red targeting bracket around a tank doesn't mean there's not a tank there, so you've got to sort of check for them. Now, why there was nobody around this corner, it looks like the tank that was here has been dealt with. This does give me a great position for providing supporting fire to my two T50s. Up on this ridge, I've got side shots on just about everybody. So I'm putting AP rounds in, I get a bounce there. Another hit. Kill assist. I've lost visual. No red box. The tank is still most certainly there, but I can't see its outline. I am firing through the jungle fairly thickly here, so I am reliant on my team spotting. Now he's partially covered, so I'm just trying to find an angle where I can actually hit him. There we go, there's one. Looks like I'm hitting the top of the turret. That one hit the tracks. That's alright, those are good shots. I want to bust the tracks over and over again and keep him immobilized. Another shot in, and there's the kill assist. Now, this is an important thing to remember. The tanks do follow close to real life parameters in regards to what you can repair in battle at the moment. For example, your tracks can be blown off your tank and you can repair them. However, if you take critical engine or gearbox damage, it seems that you can't, and your tank will be immobilized. You'll still have full control over it, you won't be ejected, and you'll be able to use it as a stationary bunker. But you won't be able to fix it and advance forward, and that becomes very important here in a second. Got another target light up. I advance forward, but the team has already killed it. Now, I did notice this, and it is something that, well, I suppose it makes sense. It's just a mechanic I've got to get used to. When you move the cursor, the turret will automatically move to track. However, if you go into sniper mode, while the turret is still trying to track the location, it won't continue to turn to the targeted point. It'll stop on wherever you are on sniper mode and reset. So it's important to make sure your gun is pointing in the approximate direction it needs to be before you go into sniper mode. And here's where that tank damage becomes very important to me. I've angled the armor here a little, so I didn't take any damage that was going to kill me. What I did just take from that 20mm equipped Panzer over there is it just did shred my engine and gearbox. Now, my tank commander and my loader were injured. They did recover quickly, but I'm now on nearly twice the reload time I was before. My tank tracks were also blown off. I hit the repair button for them immediately, so my tracks have been repaired. However, the engine and gearbox cannot be repaired, so the target is eliminated here, and I go to advance forward. Nothing happens. The tank will not move. I am now a stationary bunker, and this is my third respawn, so I don't have another tank available after this point. All I can do is sit here. However, this match turned out to be pretty close. It was 2-on-2 at this point, and everybody was on their last respawn. I ejected out of the tank, which automatically involves the tank exploding. And that was the end of the match for me. So the results screen. Well, nothing much to write home about here. 6th place, but I was one of the lowest level tanks in the game. 12,000 credits and enough XP to fully unlock this tank in one battle. The awards that I got were basically first battles, for the awards you get for first driving a tank in battle. But what was interesting about this screen, and I was going to show this in a later dev server patch, but this is as good a time as any. This is exactly the same result screen you now get in patch 1.39. As you can see, there is a new line on here. You've got ground kills, air kills, overall deaths, and you've got a marker for kill assists. So while the weight of the results is still being held by achieving kills in the game, which is still not something I entirely agree with, at least players are now being acknowledged for performing assists in battle and being an asset to their team, even if they're not racking up the massive kills. Now, let's have a look at how tanks are customized. Now, I've seen a lot of screenshots and notes on this, but I'm yet to see very many videos on how this works. So I thought I'd do a little bit of a coverage of this here at the end of the battle. So first things first, I did unlock a new tank in that battle, as well as fully upgrading my T-26. I unlocked the T-28. So purchasing and slotting a tank is exactly the same as purchasing and slotting a tank on the live server when dealing with aircraft. Purchase the tank, pick a crew, tanks in, exactly the same way. As you can see here, you need a certain amount of tanks before you can progress to the next era. I actually need to complete that tank destroyer that I've just selected before I can start working on the KV-1. And here it is, the T-28. Now, I had this thing in War of the Tanks, and I really didn't like the look of it. I thought it was an ugly looking tank, but here in War Thunder, it looks incredible. It's like a rolling bunker with those pillboxes on the nose. So what about customizing it? Well, it's basically the same as doing an aircraft in the live server, but there is a few other options available. First things first, you've got your camouflage quality, which has a slider that varies between 0 and 100%. At 100%, the tank looks brand new and shiny. At 0%, as you can see, it's a rust bucket that's had the hell beaten out of it. So you can choose how good a tank, or how good you want your tank to look, just by selecting a percentage. Now, your second one, you have two, camouflage scale and camouflage rotation. Now, the camouflages for tanks are just a square grid with a camouflage painted on them that is then wrapped over the entire tank. By setting your scale, you select how large or how small you want the camouflage effect to be. Now, the Russian tanks are not the best way to show this, but if you look closely, you'll see that the camouflage is changing. At 100%, the paint job is very uniform. At 0%, it becomes very streaky, and you get sort of lines in the paint. So if I zoom in here, let's see. Yeah, you can sort of see there's a streak across the box there, so you can see the difference. And then you've got tank camouflage rotation, and this does exactly what it says on the box. As you use it, as you can see here, the camouflage rotates angles. So even before decals are applied, you can customize the look of your tank by adjusting these sliders and rotating and moving the camouflage over the top of the surface of the tank. What about decals? Well, they're applied in exactly the same way. So, being a Russian tank, the first thing, of course, I'm going to put on the side of it is an Australian flag, because why not? So I'll put that on the box there, same as normal. Now we'll go down here. Where's the Russian star? I don't think they ever put this particular star on any Russian tanks, but don't really care, putting it on for demonstration purposes. So we'll whack that one on, and I'll set it to reflection, so it shows up on the other side of the tank. Exactly the same as with planes. Now, like with planes, the decals are not applied over the surface, they're applied to panels. So you'll see the decal stretches here as I'm moving it around. That is because the center of the panel is considered to be a flat forward panel, but when I'm moving over the others, I'm now trying to stretch the decal over a different part of the tank. So you are going to get those stretches and warps when applying decals to tanks, exactly the same as you have the issue with aircraft. So I'll whack that one there, and we'll finish it off with a number, I think. I actually really hope they include a selection of decals that is just 30 or 40 random numbers that you can put together basically a serial number for your tank. Now I think my last one had 100, so I'll put 14 on this one because I've only got 3 to choose from, so that'll do. So we'll scale that one down, and we'll put it about there will do. So there we go, decals and camouflage customizations on tanks. Now I'm not going into custom camouflages at the moment, I really haven't played around with those. Now this is the last thing I wanted to show you, the results screen for if you don't stay in a battle. This is exactly the same as what was popping up in 1.39. As you can see, it's a little bit different than the one on the current live server. It includes details of not only how much aircraft research you got, but how much module research you got, what was applied to what vehicles, what your repair costs were, what your overall free experience earning was. It's far more detailed. It still doesn't show all team details. I would like it if you clicked on the box, it will bring up the results screen, but it's still better than how it was. So there we go, the closed beta test for ground forces, and I am liking what I'm seeing. Everything is much improved since the last time I was on this. I see myself in the future spending a lot more time here and doing a lot more testing. Anyways, ladies and gents, I'm going to call this video here. Click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Drive smart, drive safe, and I'll catch you on the battlefield.